foosball, we've got a couple of things to discuss here with regards to Kiwi football. Every week, it seems like some new Kiwi football is doing something crazy, and I learn about this through your clips and information that you put out on Twitter, X, Instagram, and everywhere else. This week we had Jamie Searle making some great saves for Forest Glen. Is that it?
Forest Green Rovers.
Forest Green, Glen Green, same English idea. Forest Green Rovers, some great saves. So shout out to Jamie Searle. However, that's nothing new for the last few months. Because over the last few months, we've talked about the All Whites goalie depth, and we've had Zach Jones making some great saves, Max Crocombe, we've had Nick Zanev, Alex Paulson, someone to watch out for in the Wellington Phoenix setup, and Ollie Sale in the A-League as well. So I listed 6 goalies, at least 3 of whom have been doing some highlight-worthy things overseas. How are you assessing that Jamie Searle specifically, but then flowing into that All Whites Flying Kiwis kind of goalkeeping situation?
Yeah, well, the All Whites don't have a game in this current. There's an international window that's going on right now. They don't have a game now, but they do have a game in the next window. I think it's Ireland, unless that's the window after. But anyway, they're supposed to be playing in that'll be 6 weeks or something like that. And I do think that goalkeeping, certainly the goalkeeping kind of depth chart, there's a little bit open in terms of who's the starter, because it was Stefan Marinovic for quite a while. Didn't mention Stefan Marinovic in that list. You know why? Because he hasn't had a club since the start of the year. He's just not been playing professional football. So if you're not playing, you're not in the mix. Winston Reid is the only person with the I don't know, the level of mana to be able to still get picked as a full-time international footballer. And even then, that was a short-term thing at the end of a World Cup cycle. That didn't last beyond that. He's now retired. Although not officially retired from club duty, I will say. I don't know what he's actually going to do, though. I haven't heard anything from him since. But
Wellington Phoenix need a centre back.
They could use one, but he's living the sunny life in Dubai these days, so he's maybe more likely to end up playing with Cristiano Ronaldo or something in the Saudi League, or who knows. Anyway, so the incumbent goalkeeper from the previous World Cup cycle is out of the picture right now. Ollie Sale had a nice little run there, but questionable form in his last season with the Phoenix, which was below the level that he's capable of, obviously, because the couple of seasons before that he was very good. But also, I think maybe somewhere in between is his usual level, and he's not necessarily commanding the full-time starters gig. He didn't really have a game or two in their All Whites. A lot of his appearances, he's only made about 10 appearances, and a lot of them were against the OFC teams in qualifying, and he hasn't quite hammered home that status. Therefore, Max Crocombe gets a go, I think, in the Qatar game that got abandoned. So it looks like maybe and he might have played, I think Crocombe might have played against Sweden before that as well. So it's starting to look like Crocombe is nudged ahead in the number one gig. But it's not just the number one. It's also you pick 3 goalkeepers in a traveling squad, and there's at least 6 options competing. And that's without looking at a younger dude like, say, Case Sims, or, there's a or Marinovic comes back into the picture. Who knows? There's a lot of goalkeeping depth at the moment. I will say maybe not superstar, no doubter, doing things like some of the outfielders are doing at the moment level, which is why it is a debate, but it's good depth. It's nice. And these dudes, not all of them are starting goalkeepers for their clubs. Jamie Searle certainly hasn't been. He's at an interesting time of it. He's from the Waikato region. He went over to play for the academy for, I think it was Aston Villa the first year he went to England. Then the second year he moved to Swansea. I think he stayed at Swansea for 2 years, again playing youth team football. Then he moved to play first team football with, so I was going to say Brentford, but it's not them. It's one of the other ones, like Barnsley, I think it was. So we was with Barnsley, played a couple, I think 2 appearances in the first team, sat on the bench a few times, but he was sort of the third string goalkeeper for them. Then this year he moves to Forest Green Rovers, where he's now the second string goalkeeper. So he's been making a few transfers. He's been through a few different clubs, but he's also sort of like, with each transfer, he's stepped up his career a little bit. He's gone to from like, under 18s down to 21s or whatever it is, and then to first team football as a third choice, then to first team football as a second choice. So these saves that he was making that were in the highlight clip were from the EFL Trophy, which is the lower league cup competition, starts with the group stage and then goes into knockouts. Ben Wayne's team actually made the final of it last year. He did score in one of the group games, actually, Ben Wayne. So this was an opportunity for a few reserves. This is Searle's chance. He also played in a League Cup game, I think, for them earlier on in the season, and did actually make a mistake in that one. It wasn't amazing, but he was absolutely brilliant in the second game here. Similar deal to where Niksanev's doing. Like, he had been first choice goalkeeper for AFC Wimbledon a lot. Then this year he's not. He's the backup. Played absolutely brilliantly in the first League Cup game that he got an opportunity in, which earned them a chance to play Chelsea in the next round. And then they picked the other goalie for the Chelsea game, which was quite rude of them. But then he had a very good game in the EFL Trophy as well. He saved a penalty in the shootout as they got a bonus point there. Max Crocombe started the season as a backup for Burton Albion. And then the other guy who was playing ahead of him, who was actually an ex-Chelsea sort of prospect who never made it at Chelsea. They were both new signings for some reason. The other guy's getting the games ahead of Crocombe, but the other guy plays crap, concedes a bunch of goals, then gets injured. Crocombe comes in, is fantastic for a couple games. The other guy comes back from injury. He's stuck on the bench behind Crocombe, so Crocombe's earned those gigs. There's, it's again, like, it's not, these guys aren't at the Premier League. There's a League One, League Two kind of levels in England. But every one of them, when they've been opportunities, they've played well. And I think especially with goalkeepers, the level matters maybe a little bit less. Like, a striker scoring a bunch of goals in League Two doesn't compare to scoring goals in the Premier League. I think with goalkeepers, it's just the movement is a bit more restricted. The opportunities are more restricted. It's sort of like a dude at that level playing very well could translate higher a little bit more. So we'll see. It's going to be a funky one when Darren Baisley gets to pick his first all-white squad as the permanent manager. He's got some goalkeeping things to figure out. There's a lot of good goalies there.
We've also got the Cup finals happening this weekend. Just pick out a few different key topics, not like respect to the teams. They're all competing. Can they win? Can they not? But my interest in domestic football is always forecasting some players, highlighting some players or key trends in the domestic football landscape. Who are you watching out for in these cup finals? Obviously, Chatham Cup and Kate Sheppard Cup for the women, because this is where the best footballers that enter the Flying Kiwis realms come from. So who's a couple of individuals in the Chatham Cup and a couple of individuals in the Kate Sheppard Cup who you are interested in? And also that flows into National League. So if we can identify some talent here for the Cup finals, then we can learn about them more in the National League as well.
Yeah, the Kate Sheppard Cup finals between Wellington United and Western Springs. So both of them will sort of be National League clubs. Western Springs qualified for National League. Wellington United don't. The capital region don't have automatic qualification, but they're trying to build towards it. So there's 2 capital teams this year instead of just one. And they've Capital Football have kind of said that basically Wellington United's going to control one of those teams, and the champions of the Cap Prem, Karori, going to control one of the other teams. So I expect they'll be able to bring in players from other clubs who aren't of those 2. But you'll see mostly the basis of those 2 Capital Prem teams will be reflecting those 2 clubs. So effectively, Wellington United are also in the National League in a sort of roundabout way. Definitely with those 2 clubs, though, it's hard to pick players because I need to see the cup final in order to learn about them, because those games are not visible. They're not streaming very many women's club games during the winter season, so I haven't really seen a lot of them. But I know a lot of those Wellington United players will have played for Capital last year in the in the National League. There'll be a few names to recognise there once I see a team list and have an idea. And Western Springs certainly, they did lose a few players from last year's National League stint, but you got some like Sofia Garcia will be there, American forward who's very, very quick and direct and scores a lot of goals. And like Lily Jervis at the back. It's got some, particularly out wide, you'll see a few players who have been playing in age grade tournaments. I think also a name who's popped up playing the, who I think is going to the under-16s with New Zealand. So a lot, I assume she was probably just another American import. Her name is Ella Jerez, but she's in the New Zealand squad for the under-16 Oceania Championships that are coming up in a couple of weeks. So there's a name to watch automatically. Definitely I'll do some cross-referencing between recent national age grade squads with the, what do you call it? With the, like these squads that are involved in for the email probably tomorrow. For the men's competition, you've got Melville United, who didn't make the National League. Were in the National League last year, though. Didn't qualify this year, but they have. So this is like their whole season on the line. They're up against Christchurch United, who have been winning absolutely everything in the South Island. They won the South Island title again. All three of the regional leagues had repeat winners, by the way. Auckland City, Wellington, Olympic also winning titles. Christchurch United hadn't lost a game until last week. They last week lost to Kashmir Technical in the last game of the season, having already wrapped up the title with a cup final the week after. So I suspect they probably rested a couple of players, or at least their mind was on the game ahead. But they're looking to win a Chatham Cup, and you're starting to see, like, because Christchurch United, right? The story with them is there's a Russian fella who owns them called Slava Main, who's very rich. Like very, very, very wealthy man. He's put a lot of money into that club, but not just into the first team. It's not just one of those things like chasing glory with the first team, signing all the best players from around the region. They've really put a lot of money into their academy, and they're trying to set up, like, you can't say the South Islands version of the Wellington Phoenix Academy because they don't have an A-League pathway like the Phoenix do, but it's certainly the biggest sort of production line in the South Island these days. We have seen quite a few, increasingly so as well. Whenever a national age grade squad is named now, you're seeing a couple of Christchurch United players in there, which didn't used to be the case. So it's beginning to really show some dividends now. You'll see a few of those guys, I'm sure. In the cup final, again, I'll cross-reference some of them, but some dudes I think one dude in particular, if I'm picking someone from Christchurch United, is have a little peek at Sam Phillip up front, who is an ex-Wellington Phoenix dude, went to some United States stuff, so he's probably early 20s, I'd say. And he was a Golden Boot winner for the Southern League. He's come back this year, scored bundles and bundles and bundles of goals for the Rams, and he'll be a very tough one to contain for Melville, who also have one of the best rates of picking young players as well. I haven't seen enough of the dudes that they're like current sort of crop, but I do know they're sort of best players from last year. You had like Josh Galletley and Ollie Collotti was playing. Ollie Collotti actually was Christchurch United, and then also Melville. He played for both of them, but is now at Auckland City. So there's they lost a few of their best younger dudes from last year, and have still had one of the best rates of sort of youth players in the first team throughout the Northern League this season. So Melville's just got this ongoing thing, but I think the story with them is, even though there is very much like a youth focus, you can see in Melville, and they're producing very good players. And both of these teams doing that from outside this typical Auckland Wellington kind of dynamic of where most of the players are coming from, which is beautiful to see. You want to spread that around as much as possible. I think also, though, the story for Melville is probably about, he's 38-year-old now, Aaron Scott, who is their inspirational captain. He's played for the All Whites, National League legend going back many years. Last game of football before he retires, and it's a cup final. And Melville's going to have good travelling support. For some reason, the game's in Auckland, but even though it's between a Hamilton club and a Christchurch club. But yeah, the farewell for Aaron Scott is certainly going to be that's certainly going to be a rowdy one, especially if they win. Although I will say, Christchurch United should be favourites there.
do you like? Where do you rank that Christchurch kind of production line amongst the context of Kiwi football?
It's a good question. It's not the Phoenix. It's trying to compete with Ole Academy, I would say. I think Ole Academy's backlog gives them more of a thing, but in terms of the current screen system, there's not much difference. Ole isn't, they haven't had a McCoward or a Stamenic for a couple of years. There are like Auckland City don't put as much effort into youth things, but they do bring through a few. Auckland United is a club that's put in a bit of an emphasis. But I'd say as far as clubs go, I don't know that many clubs that operate in like who don't have that professional thing like the Phoenix. I don't know that many club or all being private academies, even though this is sort of an example of a private academy from a club. I don't know that there's any club that would. I think Christchurch United certainly would claim to hold their own against anyone across the country.